Hello, my name is Joseph Daniel Bailey, and I am a half-breed North Side hood rat from Houston, Texas.
Hi, Joe.
Hi, Joe. Welcome. You're in the
And a grateful, recovering drug addict and alcoholic. It's my pleasure to be here. I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm not much of a speaker, and I'm grateful for y'all to have me here, and very grateful that y'all have such a good turnout. It's really good to see so many people in the recovery community coming out. And so I guess I'll get started with a little bit about me. I was born and raised in the north side of Houston, Texas. My father, a Caucasian man. My mother is Hispanic. He was smart enough to find him a beautiful Hispanic woman. So luckily they created me. I used to be something before electricity. That's a joke. Y'all can go ahead and laugh at that. I'm going to say a lot of off-the-wall awkward things that, let's just get this out of the way. If I say something that you think might be funny, just go ahead and laugh. And if I say something that you know is funny, but you don't want to be the only one to laugh, go ahead and do it, because you're going to start the floodgates open. And, but maybe I'm just not funny. So I grew up in the north side of Houston. Families over here, Equipment and Elision area, Fifth Ward area. My dad was a banker with a bank called Allied Champions Bank, which is further north out. And I was born in 1976. I have two older sisters. They're 10 years older than me, and another sister who's 3 years older than me. So I was the baby and the only boy, so I was spoiled rotten by my mother and my sisters and my father as well. He started doing really well in his business probably when I was about 8 years old. Back in those days, you could make money being a banker. I don't know how, but he did well. We seemed to climb the social status ladder around that time. We were living over here, and we started moving further north, and we were kind of like the Beverly Hillbillies. We didn't fit in where we were going to, but we were coming anyway. And so we moved into this nice affluent neighborhood out in the Champions area, 1960 Champions Forest Drive. And we were rolling into this neighborhood in this old beat up classic Ford truck that would probably look like Mater from Cars, with all of our stuff piled. The only thing that was missing was Granny on top with the rocking chair. And we got pulled over every time we went in the neighborhood, and what are y'all doing here? And anyway, I went to private school at a church over on 59 and Hopper called Greenwood Village Baptist Church. Now, Greenwood Village Baptist Church is what they call an independent fundamental Baptist church. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. It's not Southern Baptist. It's independent fundamental. It means every single word of the Bible is absolutely true, and you better not have your hair better not touch your ears, or we're going to beat you. That type of place. Women better not wear pants. They better not speak. Just very barbaric is what I would say, and very cultish. But it did give me the opportunity to be very well versed in the scriptures, which I'm grateful for that, because that would come up later in my life as part of my spirituality program that I use to stay sane. So when I was about 12 years old, I was a real big metalhead. This is about 10 years old, about 1986, 1987. So you had Poison, Guns N' Roses, AC/DC, Ozzy Osbourne. You had these bands that were really doing something, and I wanted to do something too. And so me and my buddies that I'd met when I moved out, there's a bunch of rich white kids. The only thing that they had to do out there was drink and smoke pot. And so I got into that because I wanted to fit in, and knowing what I know now, though, I was also my heredity had what constitutes the disease to fall into that very quickly, which I wasn't aware of. I just thought I was having a good time. I was just a kid. But my friends, they had drum sets and guitars and stuff. They were all just junk. But we'd get out in the garage and just bang and make noise and put on spandex and grow our mullets out, which I'm seeing they're coming back now. Mullets they're the big thing. Yes, they are coming back. Normally on a night like tonight, I'd be playing at some honky tonk or some nice family establishment where they pay me to play music, and I see a lot of. If it's a family place, I get to see a lot of young kids, and they all have mullets now. And I'm like, wow, what is going on? But when I was about 12, my dad came home from work one day, and he said, I've got tickets to go see a concert. Now, I had been playing football from the time I was about 8, and I enjoy the game of football, but I was really using it as a technique to draw the attention of females. I thought if I was a football player, these women would want, because I was at that age where I was interested in females having some kind of attraction to me, and it just wasn't working out. So when I was about 12, he comes home and says, we're going to a concert. And I'm like, all right, who is it? He says, this guy called George Strait. And I was very disappointed. I was, because I wanted to go see Black Sabbath or Metallica. My first concert was going to be some guy I never even heard of. So I thought it'd be a good idea to get familiar with his music. So I got Greatest Hits Volume 1 and 2, which if you haven't heard these, I recommend you get them and listen to them over and over again. And I started listening to this guy's music, and it was catchy. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't what I was into. But as I would listen to it more, I would get to know it a little bit better, and I was wearing this thing called a Walkman. Now, a Walkman is a little box that has a cassette tape inside of it with these little reels that have magnetic tape on them you've heard of one. You might, this is about this big, you wear it on your side, and it has a little cord. There's no Bluetooth. It's a cable that runs to your head, and you look like you're an air traffic controller. And I would walk around the house with that on, and I would sing along to these songs. And my mother and father, they would, of course, you're always gonna tell your children good things. Hopefully, I'm not always doing that, but they were very encouraging, and they said, when you sing that songs, you sound similar to the guy that's singing them on the tape. So anyway, the night of the concert comes, and we go down to this place called the Astrodome. Have you heard of this place? No. It's this big dome. Yes. It's
Minute Maid?
No. This is way before. This is before Minute Maid was Enron. This is in the Astrodome. The Houston Astros used to play there all week, and then on Sunday they turn it into a football stadium, and the Houston Oilers would play there. You probably don't know who they are either, and that's sad because they are a great part of my childhood. So it was in the Houston Astrodome, and when they had this thing called the rodeo before the concert started. Now, I'm from the north side of Houston. I work in the north side of Houston now, and there's a lot of horses out there now. The people tie horses up to the trees in their yards out there. But I was not a horse person or a cowboy. This is a facade. This is a character that I've created because George Strait wore stuff like this. So I had no desire to watch a rodeo or see little kids chase calves or bull riding or bronco busting or whatever it's called. And it took forever. I sat there forever, and this guy's on there like, all right, Houston, let's give him some love. I'm like, oh, how much love does this guy need? And so anyway, finally, after about 12 hours, it's time for the concert. So they wheel this stage out with all these tractors to this big dirt pile in the middle of the Astrodome. There's a big square painted out in the middle where they know where to put the stage at. And so they wheel it out. I'm watching all this, and it's kind of neat. So then the lights go out, and it's time for this guy George Strait to come out. Now, when these lights go out, this is Texas, so the most beautiful women in the world are here, and there's a lot of them in this room tonight. But seriously, that wasn't a joke. I'm saying I'm going to be serious. So all these gorgeous women start falling out, crying, and throwing their bras and panties at this guy. And I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, what am I doing playing football? I said, this is the thing right here. I said, so it's ironic because shortly after that, my sister was she was a little older than me, she was in a choir concert where they were singing pop songs at the junior high there. And she failed her classes, so she didn't get to participate in this school function. And her best friend failed as well, so she didn't get to participate. And my best friend was her best friend's little brother. So the four of us went down there and did everything we could to sit in that audience and disrupt our friends from doing this, because they didn't get to be a part of it, and we just want to disrupt stuff. So we're hooping and hollering, and finally we get kicked out, and they escort us out, and we cause a big problem because we're assholes. And the next day the principal calls us down, and the choir teacher's there, and she's all upset, and we've ruined her work. And he'd been, my friend and I, every day we were in the principal's office. You know, if I was sent to the principal's office, I could count on him coming in a few minutes later. No, here, I saved your seat. And so this was just one more. And so we'd been threatened all year long that if we didn't straighten our acts up, we were not going to be allowed to go to the 6th grade dance. Oh, man. So this was the straw that broke the camel's back. He said, you know what? No dance for you. And we're like, we want to go to the dance. All we want to do is dance. I don't think either one of us cared about dancing. We just didn't want to miss the social event of the year. But we were banned from the school dance. And he turns to the choir teacher. He says, what would you like me to do to these hooligans? And she says, well, I think their punishment should be that they have to take my class next year. Oh. Well, I wanted to take theater as my elective course. Because I heard it was fun. And so once again, we don't want to take choir, we want to take theater. You're going to take choir. So the next year I take the choir class, and immediately this lady sees that I have a aptitude for the craft. And she takes a great interest in me. I really think she might have been trying to do something else with me, but I was too stupid to act upon it. She was one of those teachers. But she did teach me, she did, looking back, I was like, why couldn't I have been a little more in tune to what was going on? You know, she would say stuff and I'd just be like, huh? And, but now looking back, I know what she was trying to accomplish with that. But anyway, she did take a great interest in me and spent a lot of time honing that craft, and I did very well, and I excelled. And they started putting me in school shows, and immediately I started getting phone calls from girls that went to school, and it worked. So right about a few years after that, I'm getting into high school, and my father, who was my biggest supporter, by this time I'm playing little events. You see parents that take their kids around, let them sing at like little different things and stuff. I was one of those kids, and my father was my best friend, heavy supporter of everything that I did. We put out a cassette tape of cover songs, George Strait, Alan Jackson, Garth Brooks. It was just little kids singing songs that were already out, but anybody buys stuff from little kids, so I take them to church and sell out, and I take them to the picnic and sell them out, and I think I have one left that's still in the plastic that I hold on to, that just for nostalgic reasons. But one day I was at a friend of mine's house, and his mom calls me and says, hey, your mom's on the phone. So I go grab the phone, and my mom tells me, we took your dad to the doctor and they found something, and we're not quite sure what it is, but don't worry, everything's gonna be all right. Well, I knew right then, I don't know how to explain it, but immediately a voice inside me told me, your father's gonna die, and that's it. And it's strange that I knew that, because it was several years before he slowly deteriorated from pancreatic cancer. And I was very young. I think I was 15 when he got sick, and he died when I was 18. And his demise was dramatic, because I'm about 5'6.5", maybe. I say I'm 5'8", but I'm lying. My dad was 6'1". He was a basketball player in high school. He said he was 6'1", but he looked about 6'4" to me. But of course, I'm looking up at this giant. but he deteriorated to nothing. He deteriorated to a shell of a person. And so he was a deacon of that church that I grew up in. He was the financier, and he was a man of God. He was a Sunday school teacher. I never saw the man do a thing wrong in his life that I knew of. But I never got to know him that well, so I don't know. But I was angry. I was angry at this God that we served, because why? If there are so many, forgive me if I get a little emotional. If there are so many people that are doing so many horrible things, why would you take this man that is this great servant of you, this soldier in this army you have, why would you let this happen to him? So I cursed God, and I said, I'm going to do what I want from now on. I'm going to live the way I want to live. And I did. And so when he got sick, I just quit going to school altogether. And by this time, I'd become I'd become part of the in crowd of the school that I was going to, because I'd smoked pot, I drank, I could sing and play guitar, and I just fit in. People liked me. So I dropped out of school about the 10th grade, and I didn't go back. And several years went by. He passed away, and I was going nowhere. My life had no direction, no meaning. I had a girlfriend that was going to school still, and we were sitting at the park one day, and we're sitting on the back of her car, Meyer Park on Cypresswood, and I'm literally telling her, she's telling me she's going to Texas A&M, and I'm telling her I'm going nowhere. I don't have a job. I don't have any prospects. I don't know what I want to do with my. If I could go back now, I'd have joined the Marine Corps, because I know now that would have been something that would have given me some kind of structure. But back then, I probably wasn't trying to hear that. So I didn't have anything to do with in my life. And right about then, here comes the theater director from Klein Forest High School, jogging up, and he's carrying a staff like Moses. And I can only assume that he was carrying that just in case a dog attacked him or whatever. But it still comes out in my mind that he had that staff with him, and he's a very animated guy. And he's like, "Hey, man!" I'm like, "Hey." He's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Nothing," literally nothing. But not like that, but just nothing. But in my mind, I'm thinking nothing. And he's like, "Well, every 4 years we have we get a contract with the school district, and we put on this huge musical, and this is that year." He said, "Have you thought about coming back to school?" And I was like, "Well, I've got about 13 credits, and I'm 18 years old, a sophomore. I'm not a good student. I'm not telling you. These are the things I'm thinking." I said, so no is the short answer. And he's like, "Well, if you come back, there's a good chance we'll give you the lead role." And I'm like, oh, because he had been putting me in little folly shows and things like that throughout the years, and he knew I could sing. And in high school, sometimes it's difficult to come across guys who can sing, I guess. So I was like, well, I explained to him, I don't have the credits to return to school. Because the same with theater and choir and everything else, the no pass, no play law goes with all of that. Just like my sisters in the school show there, they couldn't do it because they failed. So he's like, well, just go talk to your counselor, see what he has to say about it. And so I went to go see my counselor that following Monday. I sat down with him, and he said, "Oh, Mr. Bradley tells us that he wants you to be his lead guy in his musical coming up." And they didn't even know what musical it was going to be. I was hoping for West Side Story, because I've always wanted to be Tony in West Side Story. Who doesn't? I guess people who don't know what that is don't. But I loved it. Or Bernardo, or Riff, or whatever. And so I wanted that. But if I'm the only guy that he can find that can sing, we're not doing West Side Story. So I sit down with my counselor. He says, here's what's going to happen. You're going to come back to school. In first period, you're going to go to choir and work on the songs for the musical. In second period, you're going to go to theater and work on the scenes for the musical. Then you're going to go get a job somewhere out there doing something. I ended up going to work at Schlotsky's Deli. You're going to get a job, and then you're going to come back here at 2:30, and you're going to rehearse from the musical from 2:30 to 6, and then you're going to graduate in June. And I was like, so I explained in my situation. I was like, well, I haven't had Spanish, I haven't had health, I haven't had, there's a lot of classes that are required for you to take before you can graduate from high school. And he's like, and so he repeats the scenario again. And as dumb as I am, the second time, I was like, all right. So that was one of the first times that I can remember that my higher power, who I call God, had intervened in my life in a way that, even though in spite of myself, even though I had turned my back on everything that I trusted spirituality-wise and was living as what people of my faith would call like the devil, my Father was still looking out for me. And I'm not talking about my earthly father. I'm talking about my heavenly Father, and I hope it's all right to say that here. And I don't care if it is or not. I'm going to say it anyway. So he took care of me in ways like that from that point on that I can't even fathom to explain. And time, there's not enough ink to write it all down, and there's not enough time to tell it all, but the Lord has blessed me greatly throughout my life, in spite of myself. So we did the musical. It ended up being Cinderella. So I got to play Prince Charming in Cinderella, and this choreographer came, and she taught us all the waltzes and the foxtrots and all the stuff you see on Dancing with the Stars. I had to learn for this particular musical, and she was like, you're really good at this. I work at Sam Houston State University, and we sure could use a guy like you up there. I'm going to talk to Dr. Miller about bringing you up there. So I've gone from where I told y'all to now I'm going to college in music and theater. And it was the greatest semester I ever had. I failed out immediately because I was a horrible student, and I didn't know what opportunity was at that time because I was a dumb kid. I was a kid. I emotionally stunted myself from that first drink and drug when I was probably about 12 or 13 years old, and I don't think I've ever recovered. I'm still there. And I'm just able to mask it and pretend like I'm a grown-up, but I'm not. I'm a child. Came back home after I failed out of college, and immediately began floundering again. Picked up my first DWI in 1995. And didn't think too much of it. Went to jail for a night or two and did a year's probation, which was horrible for me because pot is one of my drugs of choice. Of course, anything you put before me is the choice of drug at that moment. But marijuana was my self-medicating drug for 25 years that kept me. I have what they call a chemical imbalance of the brain. This is what they say. I don't know. I think they're crazy. That makes me have a lot of high energy. And they recommend stimulants such as Adderall or Ritalin or meth to calm me down a little bit. And but I don't like to be calm. I went to a psychologist once, and he's like, we think you're manic depressant, and you spend a lot of time up in the manic side, but you don't spend any time in the depressive side. You're always up here, and you always think everything's going to work out, and you think everything's good, and that's not normal. So we want to give you something that'll bring you down to the depressive side a little bit, so you'll be here in the middle. So I said, well, let me get this straight. I'm happy all the time, and I think everything's going to work out, and you want to give me a pill that's going to make me not be that way. And he said, that's right. I said, I don't think so. That doesn't sound appealing at all. I'd rather be delusional that everything's going to be great than be miserable and thinking things might not work out. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. That's just not me. So pot was my drug of medication, and alcohol was my mistress. I spent all my time with alcohol day and night. And so I began to flounder again, and got picked up that first DWI. I got married. I went back to that independent fundamental Baptist church that I grew up in, because I was back working at Schlotsky's, that's where the girls were at. They're at church, I guess. I'm not going to school, so I got to go to church. So I met a beautiful woman at the church, and within a short period of time, she was with my child. So in the Independent Fundamental Baptist Church, what do? You get married. You don't do anything else. And you do it quickly, so no one knows that she got pregnant before you got married. So I'm married quick, and so we get married. She has a miscarriage, so now I'm married to this girl I barely know, have no baby, working at Schlotsky's. So then I move into different jobs, flounder around a little bit. My mom starts dating a guy out in Crosby. She actually meets him at a show. Throughout my whole life, I'm always playing in bands and playing music somehow. So I was playing in this band at this place in Highlands, Texas called Tugboat Annie's, which is a little marina on Clear Lake Road on the San Jacinto River. And while I'm there, for some reason, my family never comes to see me do these type of things, and I don't know why they would go to Highlands, Texas, because they live out the Woodlands Spring area. I don't know what they were doing there, but I guess I convinced them to come. And I'm up on stage playing, and this big old 6'4" man comes up to my little 5 foot maybe mother. And he comes up to her and he's doing this, like I'm playing like this, like what's this guys? That's my mother. And he comes up to her and he's like, come on. And he's doing that old man dance. And he takes a step back. He's like, come on. And my mom's sitting there batting her eyes, and my sisters are like, go. And I'm like, Mom. And so anyway, she ends up getting together with this guy. He ends up being my stepdad. And great man, wonderful man, still to this day. My dad was a banker, and if something went wrong with my car, I took it to him, and he took it to the shop, and he got it fixed, and he gave it back to me. And I was like, cool. I bought a truck, a 1999 Chevy Silverado was the first vehicle that I ever purchased with my own money. And one day the water pump started weeping. If anyone's familiar with a water pump, it's got a little hole in the bottom that when it goes bad, it starts dripping. It's called the weeping hole, and it made me weep as well. I was like, what's going on here? So I took it to him because he's a handyman that knows how to do stuff. And I took it over there, and I went to his house. By this time, we'd moved to Crosby, Texas. My mother soon migrated to his house, and I'm going where mommy's at. But by this time I'm married, and we're living about 3 houses down, me and this young bride of mine. So I take him the truck, and he's looking at it, and I'm waiting for him to say, okay, let me fix it. And he's like, you know what? Got a lot of tools in there. You get in there and you take that thing apart. Take that water pump out, go down there to the AutoZone, get you another water pump, put it back in there, put it back together. It'll run just fine. And I said, that's not why I'm here. I didn't come to hear this. What is it? That's a great story. I think you should do that. But no one had ever said anything like that to me before. And he's like, the tools are over there. They're in a certain area. They're laid out in a certain way, and they're clean. And I expect them to be that way when you're done. And he went inside. And I'm standing out there like, what just happened? I need this truck running. But I did what he said. And it worked. And every now and then he'd come out with a cup of coffee and watch me and give me a little, maybe do this, maybe do that. But I did it. And when I was done, I had this feeling of just, I can do anything. I can take anything apart and put it back together. And I've been that way ever since. There's nothing in my life other than myself that breaks that I don't repair. Anything. If somebody else does it, you can do it. That's what my mother tells me, and she's right. So, but anyway, I'm floundering along, and then so I get a job with Union Pacific Railroad in 2004, and up until then, I've been working with my stepdad. Right after I married my wife, I was working at Schlotsky's, and I got a job with Wells Fargo Bank. And I thought, I'm going to be just like my dad. He was a banker. Now I'm a banker. But banking had changed. Now it was like a retail job. I was working at a bank inside of a Randall's, on Kirkendall. And I was there from 7 in the morning till 7 at night. And my job was to open the doors, close the doors, and open checking accounts for people. And when I wasn't doing that, I needed to work the teller drawer. But there was no money there. It wasn't like, my dad made money. This is not, I mean, it was good. But at the time, I thought it was good. But one day, one of my coworkers came to me and he said, hey, we can reverse each other's overdraft fees. I'm like, we can? He's like, of course we can. We work here. I'll reverse yours. You reverse mine. I said, all right. So I didn't work there for very long. They came to me and they said, you can't do that. I was like, well, I won't do it again. They're like, you're right. You sure won't. There's the door. So then I had nothing going on. I was collecting I don't even think I was able to collect unemployment because I robbed the bank. So my stepdad had always bugged me to come out and be a helper in the plant. He's a crane operator in the refineries, and he was world renowned. He's been all over the world. He's one of the top crane operators in his craft. He goes to Africa, he goes to Brazil, wherever they need someone that can operate a 2100 Manitowoc, he's there. So he tells me he can get me in as a third class carpenter's helper at Chevron Phillips on Showlander and I-10. They're building a new loop reactor, which is a plastics creator. And he gets me on out there, and I'm like, I'm a banker. No business being out here in this mud. But I get out there, I worked there for a week, and we got paid every Thursday, and that first paycheck was like 3 times the amount I was getting for being a banker. And I was like, whoa, wow. And not only that, I realized that I love being outdoors, and I love getting dirty, and I was with a carpenter named Alan Broussard, who was one of the best woodworkers I've ever known. And he was the type of person that would, even though he would give you shit for not knowing anything, he wasn't the kind of person that would enjoy watching you not know something. And I love people like that. I really dislike when I see someone that knows how to do something watch someone that doesn't know how to do it with some type of joy for whatever reason, whatever kick they get out of it. I always like to show people how to do something before they even get started, because being helpful is much better than being hurtful. So he was the type of guy, he would give me hell because it was fun, and that's part of the job, is you have to be leathery skinned because you're going to get picked on no matter what. But he taught me so much, and I learned so much, and I progressed through different crafts and moved up and made a good deal of money. But we were always chasing that next job. We'd build something over here, then that would end, then we'd go build something over here. So my cousin went to work for the railroad, and he told me they were hiring. So I hired in there in 2004. And the whole time I was working in the refineries, I was smoking pot the whole time. And I was carrying, you shouldn't be listening to this. I was carrying a little Elmer's glue sized bottle of clean urine in my, right here, all the time. Sometimes I'd be working, it would fall out. I'd be like, oh, it's nothing. But I'd warm it up in the microwave in the morning, and because you gotta have it at the right temperature. So when I get the interview with the railroad, I'm like, this is a lifelong career. I can't be carrying piss with me all the time. It's not normal. Is it? It's not normal, is it? No. So I stopped smoking pot, and I think on Halloween of 2004, and I stepped on the Union Pacific property of June in 2005. So I started drinking more to compensate for not having the marijuana, until my best friend, the kid from junior high that raided the school show and got kicked out, the same guy, I just got him hired on with the railroad about a month ago. So we've been together since we were 11, and we're not going to part now. And we both kind of calmed down a lot, so we're able to be there on time. But he calls me one day, and he's working for the elevators union at the time, which is a really great job if you can get it. And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm smoking a joint. I'm like, how are you smoking a joint if you're working for the union? He's like, well, I got that new stuff that's undetectable. I'm like, really? what is that all about? I want to know more about this. So he turns me on to K2, which of course I'm already off balance, as you can see, made me completely psychotic, and also with the railroad you have incredible health benefits. So I've got a daily regimen of hydrocodone, Soma, and Xanax.
Oh my God.
Because the beer is just not getting it done. When I wake up, I got to get my mind right. So I'm on, and months later I would read an article that said 11,000 people dead from this holy trilogy of drugs. I'm like, oh, that's what I take. So I went to rehab for that because I was bad off on prescription drugs, and I was one of the first people that they ever did Suboxone on, and luckily I hated it. I hated the way it made me feel, but I quit doing prescription drugs at that time, and I really haven't. I might have fallen back into it here and there, but not to the extent. I was doing 30 to 40 of every one of those pills. It seemed like a day. I was bad, but I had the insurance, and back then I could get prescriptions here, prescriptions there. I had all these prescriptions. I had endless amounts. Every time I'd have a table full of these pills. I'd be like, if I sold this stuff, I could be rich. I'd be like, nah, let's just take them all. Because they were selling for like at this time they were selling for $3 a piece. Now I think they're like, I don't know, $8 or $9. I don't know. So I went to rehab for that, and then I was drinking very heavily, and I have a mentor of mine out there at the railroad. His name's Joe Guerra, and he was me 30 years ago, but now he is clean and sober. At this point, he's clean and sober, and he's been through this already, and he takes a liking to me because he sees himself in me. And so I start missing a lot of work. I start messing up on the job. And he comes to me, and he says, Joe, we have an employee assistance program here. If you put yourself in the program, all of your troubles with absenteeism and everything else will go away. So I did that, and they shipped me off to rehab for the first time, which was I went to rehab probably about at least 10 times for years at a time. Sometimes I'd stay there for years. And I enjoyed it because it would get me away from this wife I was married to that I didn't really like that much. It sent me to places like Knoxville, Tennessee, which is beautiful, Smoky Mountains, and but every time I'd come back, I'd fall off. And 2009, I picked up DWI number 2. While I was playing a show at the Texas Saloon in Pasadena, and I took about a bottle of Xanax and was drinking Dos Equis all night, and when it's over, the guys are like, please don't drive home. I'm like, I'm driving. So I drove home, and going down 225, I hit the wall and tore up the front end of my car, and it would only make huge left circle turns. So I get out of the car, and I look back, and there's traffic just stopped all back there. I'm drunk out of my mind, blown, I'm out of it. I get back in that car and I make huge left circles all the way down the exit ramp, all the way down the street, all the way down the intersection. And finally I end up in this parking lot of some industrial park. And the last circle that I make goes into a perfect parking spot. I'm like, And I just sit there. I sit there, and here comes Deer Park Police. I mean, anyone in their right mind would get out of that car. They would have got out of the car on the freeway. I'm like, no, I got this. But I mean, I sat there till they came. So that was DWI number 2. And somewhere along the lines of going to rehab, I started going to therapy, and the therapist surmised that the reason I was doing this to myself because I was unhappy in my marriage. And I think she wanted me to be hers. I think that's why she said that. You're just not happy. You need to be happy. So I was a coward, so I didn't have what it took to tell my wife that I'm not happy. So the best thing I could come up with is I'll find me some nice girl that I can have an affair with, and hopefully that'll be discovered, and then that'll end my marriage. It's easy enough, right? So I get on the Facebook. And this girl that was a cheerleader in my high school messages me or puts a comment in there's this girl just moved here from Austin, and she's a singer, and she wants to get involved in the music scene. So and she tags the little girl in the comments. So I click on her thing. I start going. You go like you do. I went through her whole life. I'm like, yeah, I could do something with that. She's definitely got talent. I haven't heard her sing at all, but that's not important. But then she ended up being a really great singer. And at this point, I have about 10 months sober, which is the longest point of sobriety I've had in my entire life since I was a kid. At this point, this is 2013. And so I start going over to this little girl's house, and we start playing music, and within a short period of time, we're naked. And I keep forgetting there's a little child here. Lots of little children. What are y'all letting me? Stop this. So after a short period of time, I go outside the bounds of my marriage, and I find out that this girl's talking to other guys behind my back. And I'm like, how dare you talk to other guys when I'm coming over here cheating on my wife with you? There's only one thing that I can do to kill this pain, and that's some drugs and alcohol. So I fall off. I came within about 20 days of making my first year. And when I started drinking and doing drugs again, she didn't like that guy as much as the pillar of sobriety that I was when she met me. All of a sudden, she's like, well, yeah, this is not what I signed up for. So she skirts and skates, and I confess to I get taken to the right step over here on West Alabama by one of my coworkers, and my wife comes up there to bring me some clothes, and I'm still drunk and high when she gets there, and I guess my best way of thinking is to tell her about it right now. There's something I gotta tell you. Cheating on you. And so she goes back, and she packs up everything, cleans out the bank accounts, cleans out our home, and disappears with my daughter. I'm there for 30 days, and I'm in intake, so there's nothing I can do about it. No access to get, to stop her. So she takes everything. And at this point, I have a 3,000 square foot house in Baytown, Texas, fully furnished. I've got over $5,000 in the bank, which was a decent amount of money at that time. And I was doing well. And I was doing so well, I'd rented a house for a little girl across town. I had 2 houses. I was that guy for a short period of time. It's like, I'm going to the other house. But I'm not that guy. As I realize, I don't have what it takes to be this Don Juan womanizer. I'm too kind, I guess. So when I get out, I go back to this house, and the railroad, this is about the 8th or 9th, 10th time that I've put myself in this program. So they come to me in 2013, right about December, and tell me, hey, we've gone as far as we can go with you, buddy. They said, we're gonna have to suspend you from service because the regular stuff's not working. And I found it odd, a little side note, I found it odd that the only solution that they had for drugs and alcohol, medical science's only solution is a belief in God. I said, everything else is there is no God, there's nothing, this big bang, but the only thing that's gonna help you now is God. There's no other hope. We got no medicine, we got no pill, we got nothing. Which I always found that ironic and interesting. But that was always their solution, was the steps, and of course, your higher power and surrendering your will. And I just found that divine, So they suspend me from service. My wife is gone. I'm living in a house that's empty, a 3,000 square foot house with a couch and a television. No electricity, no water. If I wanted water, I'd go out there and turn it on with some channel locks. I was burning cardboard boxes in the fireplace with a pump spray bottle of gasoline. My wife would bring my little daughter over to visit me after church. I'm over there like spraying gas, and hey, I want to get warm. And they're looking at me like, you are one pathetic loser. Yeah. And so anyway, there's this little female that used to like me when I was back in high school. She was our drummer's girlfriend when I was about 15. And I went over to practice at his house one day, and her name's Brandy, and she was probably about 14. I was probably 17, and she was probably 15 at the time. So after practice, the drummer, Chad, comes to me and says, hey, Brandy needs a ride home. She had another little friend there with her. Can you give her a ride home? She just lives over here. It's funny because we grew up probably less than a minute away from each other. Didn't really know each other, but she lived right down the street from the house that I grew up in. And he asked me if I'd give her a ride home. Sure. So I give her a ride home, and I have no qualms about busting out the pipe and blowing some herb in front of anybody because I'm that guy. So I got these two little girls in here, and I'm sitting here with this bamboo pipe that this friend of mine made. I'm like, just driving, you know, going down Greens Point, and they're like, take us to Taco Bell. So I take them to Taco Bell, they go in, I'm just sitting out there doing my thing. She comes out by herself, she gets in the car, and she looks at me with googly eyes and says, Joe? I was like, yeah. She said, will you make me stoned too? And I said, I sure will. So anyway, we went off on a 6-month little adventure together, but this is 25 years later. Everyone can see that my life is falling apart as far as my marriage, and that's when the women will come out of the woodwork, when you're available again, I guess. And she starts messaging me, hey, I see you're starting to play music again, because I started playing music because I needed money for the K2 and the beer. And so I was going down to the city center down here and playing outside of a sandwich shop, busking like this here. But they would pay me to do it because they thought it would look cool. So I'd dress extra busky and look like I was just a homeless guy. But I'd leave there with between $60 and $200 every day, which for somebody who has nothing, that's all right. And But then through a course of events, this guy asked me to be the lead singer of his band. And within a short amount of time, the whole band quit and just handed me the books and said, here, you take over. So I put together some ballers who know how to play some music, because I know everybody in this town that plays music pretty much, or at least on the north side. So I can call 3 guys that can jam and we could play any night. So that's what I did. I just did makeshift bands for about 2 or 3 months and made that money. Well, but then Facebook and all this stuff's very popular at the time, so I was making these flyers. I named the band the Sweet Leaf Junction because I was a big fan of Black Sabbath. They had a song called Sweet Leaf, and I worked for the railroads, a junction, so Sweet Leaf Junction. I was actually sitting on the porch smoking a joint of K2, and I was like, Sweet Leaf Junction, and it's stuck ever since. And so I named the band that, and she starts messaging me, hey, I see you're playing again. And I started looking at her profile. She's married to a woman, and there's nothing wrong with that. She's married to a woman, and they've got kids. I'm like, what's going on here? And the woman looks like me with no facial hair. I'm like, she could. So me being the narcissistic, I'm like, I know what happened. When she left me, she couldn't find a man as good as me, so she had to dress up a woman like me and marry her. And but anyway, after a short period of time, she takes the conversation from, and so they come out to see me that very next night. Hey, I want to come see you and we're playing at this club in Conroe called Maverick Saloon. I've never played there before, and we go there, we set up, and the place is empty. Maybe one person playing pool. Well, right around it's time for us to start playing, here comes about 40 hardcore lesbians.
Oh my God.
And the bar owners don't care what they look like. They're just happy to see. They're like, man, Texas Joe and the Sweet Leaf Junction really bring in the crowd. Well, he's like the Cher of country music. So we're bringing in the crowds. And not only that, she brings her wife with her to gawk at the man that she's going to cheat on her with. Like, there he is. Look at him. And her wife knows the deal. Women are smart. A lot smarter than I am. So she knows what's going on already. She has to. And you can see her. So once she shows up at the doorstep of that house that I'm living in, and she comes in, she looks around. She's got this great job with a drug testing company called DISA, and she's making like $150,000 a year. She comes in, she turns on the lights, she turns on the gas, she furnishes the place, and we're together. So then she has to go through a divorce with Jackie, who is her partner, and part of their decree is that she has to have a house close to Jackie so that the kids can go to school and they can share 50-50 custody. So she builds a house in spring. I'm losing this house to bankruptcy, to foreclosure. So she tells me, why don't you come live with me in this house in spring? I'm like, let me think about it. I'm kind of happy here with all the stuff you've done around here. But one night I'm drinking quite a bit, and she says, she calls me on the phone, and she says, sugar mama, she says, why don't you come over out to Cypresswood, out to Spring, just, like a woman will do. Why don't you come over here? And I've been drinking all day. I'm like, you know what, that sounds like a good idea. So I take off and I make it all the way over there, all the way from Baytown to right there north of Intercontinental Airport. 1960, I take that right on Cypresswood. Those lights go off. That's DWI number 3. So that's a felony. It's a felony offense. And but somehow I get put on 5 years probation for it, which is unheard of because that's usually TDC time. So I did very well for the first period of time, and me and this female, Brandy, we have a baby together. One day I come back to my house in Baytown, I find a bottle of pills. I look them up, and they're fertility pills. She's taking these things on the sly, trying to get pregnant without even telling me about it. And I'm just happy about it. Hey, have a baby, why not? I love kids. So I like other people to take care of them, but I love making them. That's the best part. So so she has my daughter Kylie, who is now 6, and then one day I think it was Hurricane Harvey. Maybe it was Hurricane. It was one of these things where the whole city flooded, and we're at the house there. We're all flooded in. And another thing she did when she came into my life was she took over the business of the music. I was wearing Vans and cargo shorts and t-shirts, and she came in and dressed me like this. Everything I'm wearing she probably bought. And she said, you're going to dress like this, you're going to do this, we're going to make t-shirts, we're going to make hats, we're going to sell stuff, and you're going to make a bit. So we survived that way for 7 years. I was making, for the business, we were making between $50,000 and $60,000 a year just playing music, and that was enough to make it. Because she lost that job by stealing time to hang out with me. You believe that? Yeah, but still, come on. How do you lose it? So we're living nothing on but music, and she's managing the band, and she's doing a great job. But one day we're there at the house, and we're starting to have issues. We've always been a little heated in our exchanges. Especially when substances get involved. So I found a bottle of Patron tequila in the freezer, and I drank that whole thing while we were supposed to be piddling around the house during this flood. We're flooded in, but our house is not touched. So I get that bottle in me, and she's little. She's about 4'8", maybe. She's like that, but she's got regular size appendages. She's just a small person. Not in the sense of small person, but she's I don't want to say it. Yeah, she's normal, just very small. That's horrible. So she's sitting on a gallon of paint. She's sitting on it, and she's like, this life. She's smoking a cigarette. She's like, this is just pure hell. This life is hell. That's what I said, and I'm just drank a bottle of tequila. I'm like, you want to see hell? So I get up and I grab her by the hair and I drag her. I don't drag her. I guide her out to the middle of our cul-de-sac, and I start screaming for all the neighbors to come out because y'all gonna want to see what's about to happen to this. And so they come out. They bust out their phones and they're like, let's get a look at this guy. And so the police come, and that revokes my probation for that third DWI. And I go to prison for 2 years, go to TDC. And that is where I realized that my higher power, the Lord, had been with me the whole time, and all the way back to where I had cursed him and said, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do, whatever I want. He allowed me to do all that, but now he was saying, now I'm gonna set you aside over here, and you're gonna learn to do what I want you to do, or this is where you're gonna be. And I learned quick there. I said, you know what? This is not for me. And that's a whole other story of how that all went down. It wasn't a bad experience. My time in the penitentiary, it was actually I seemed like I was in a shell of protection the whole time, and I was blessed. God made me a king even while I was in prison. So if that makes any sense. But I spent that time reacquainting myself with my spirituality. I had a great spiritual experience that relieved me from the bonds of addiction that I can't explain, because I've seen how hard people, even myself, have to work to alleviate that affliction. And I had a miraculous recovery while I was in the penitentiary. I can't really explain it, but the thought of using drugs and alcohol now disgusts me. And I don't really do a lot of speaking to AA meetings. I spend a lot of my time speaking in penitentiaries, because when I was in there, people came from the world, and I made a commitment that if and when I get out, I'm going to do that too. So that's where I do most. That is where my mission lies, is talking to guys that are still incarcerated. And I think the thing that you saw, man, had something to do with
the roundup for correctional.
Right. So that's how we came into contact with each other, because Chuck is he works with Celebrate Recovery inside of the prison system, and so that's how I came to be here tonight. And that's just a little bit. So much more. I really don't have. I've already wasted so much else. I've already passed time. So much for the music.
That's okay.
Yeah. Y'all hear one song?
Yes.
What time are y'all done at?
We don't go to bed till midnight.
Okay, all right. All right. Well, when I was in Cornerstone of Recovery in Knoxville, Tennessee, there was a gentleman there named Tony C. And he was a recovering crack addict. And he would lead the meetings on the property there every Friday night. And Tony C was a beautiful person, man. He's passed away now, but he had all of these cliches that he would say all the time. Like, if you don't put down the shovel, you're gonna keep finding more bottom, just stuff like that. He had all these cliches, so I would sit there and I would take notes of them. And then one day I sat down and I wrote this song. This song is called The Last Time. And unfortunately, when I wrote it, it wasn't the last time. But now it's a song. If you have like Spotify or Amazon or Pandora, you can search Texas Joe Bailey, and you can find the fully produced version of it, which is the guys in the studio took it way beyond what you're gonna hear right now. But it's phenomenal. It's like, check it out if you get a chance. Anyway, it goes like this. Could have built a house of white chips. I'd surrendered so many times. Those traps of life don't like to lose. They had hold on my mind. Still I'd give it up and grab that chip time and time again. But from all my highs I was full of lies, and I'd start to descend to a place so dark I could not tell the nighttime from the day. I'd just stick one in me, and I'd be on my way to the spot where the devil take my hand. He'd say, "Don't worry, fool, I got this." Yeah, it sure was sinking sand, and I let it happen time over and again. Though the game was trying to kill me, thought it was my best friend. By the grace of God I found myself back inside those walls, where I'd heard them all for freedom. And this time I took the call, and it was the last time. Yeah, something changed in me. It seems the fog was lifted for
For the first time I could see all I've been trying to find. It's where I came to believe that the power greater than me could restore my sanity. Yeah, the last time the only cost was honesty. Just feel that I should offer you what's been freely given me. Yeah, the last time. How much pain do we need? We're just promised today, and today we can be free from the last time. The last time. It was the last time. Yeah, something changed in me. It seems the fog was lifted.